Nia Johnson was just another young woman trying to make ends meet in a bustling city. At 24, life wasn't easy for her. She worked two jobs, one as a barista at a busy coffee shop downtown, and the other as an administrative assistant at a mid-sized tech company. Her days were predictable but exhausting. Mornings started with steaming cups of coffee and endless orders from customers who barely looked up from their phones. Afternoons shifted to typing reports, answering emails, and organizing files in a cubicle that felt smaller every day. But Nia didn't complain much. She had dreams, big ones, and she knew these small steps were part of the journey. She often reminded herself of her grandmother's words. Every step you take today builds the bridge to where you want to go tomorrow. It was cheesy, sure, but it kept her going when things got tough. On this particular Tuesday morning, something unusual happened. Nia arrived early at the office because there was a big meeting scheduled later that day. The CEO of one of Europe's most innovative startups was visiting their company. His name was Adrien Laurent, a billionaire known for his sharp mind and even sharper suits. Everyone in the office had been talking about him for weeks. He was famous not only for his success but also for running meetings entirely in French, his native language. Nia's boss had warned everyone to prepare. "He doesn't speak English during meetings," he said sternly, "so we need someone who can translate, or at least follow along if needed." No one volunteered, though. Most people shrugged it off, assuming the higher-ups would handle it. Nia didn't think much of it either. Why would they ask her to do anything special? She was just the assistant. As the clock ticked closer to 9 a.m., the phone on Nia's desk rang. It startled her. Calls weren't uncommon, but this one felt different. With a deep breath, she picked it up. "Hello?" she said hesitantly. Then, remembering what her boss had said about Mr. Laurent speaking French, she quickly corrected herself. "Bonjour," she added, stumbling over the word slightly. To her surprise, the voice on the other end responded in perfect French. Nia froze for a second. Her heart raced. She hadn't spoken French since her last visit to Senegal, where she spent summers with family. But somehow, the words came back to her. Slowly, she began responding, piecing together sentences she hadn't used in years. The caller turned out to be none other than Adrien Laurent himself. He wanted to confirm some details about the upcoming meeting. Nia listened carefully, nodding even though he couldn't see her, and replied as confidently as she could. When the call ended, she hung up the receiver, her hands trembling. Had that really just happened? Did she just have a conversation in French with a billionaire CEO? Around her, whispers broke out. People stared at her, wide-eyed. "Did you just talk to him?" one coworker asked, pointing at the phone like it might explode. Another chimed in. "And you spoke French? Since when do you know French?" Nia laughed nervously. I used to visit my family in Senegal when I was younger. I learned a bit there." She downplayed it, brushing off their questions with a casual shrug. Inside, however, she felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. She hadn't thought twice about her ability to speak French before. It was just something she'd picked up naturally while learning Wolof from her relatives. Now suddenly it seemed like a superpower. Little did she know this moment would change everything. For now, though, Nia returned to her usual tasks, answering emails and preparing documents for the meeting. As she typed away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was brewing. Maybe it was the way her coworkers kept glancing at her, their expressions a mix of admiration and curiosity. Or maybe it was the lingering buzz of adrenaline from the phone call. Whatever it was, Nia decided to push the thought aside and focus on getting through the day. By lunchtime, the office buzzed with anticipation. Mr. Laurent was due to arrive any minute, and everyone scrambled to make sure everything was perfect. Nia found herself double-checking the seating arrangements and rehearsing possible introductions in her head. What if he called on her again? What if she messed up? These thoughts swirled in her mind, but she tried to stay calm. After all, she'd already survived one unexpected encounter with him. How hard could the rest of the day be? As the afternoon unfolded, the atmosphere grew tense. Finally, the door opened and in walked Adrien Laurent. Tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating confidence, he greeted the team with a warm smile. Nia watched from the corner of the room, her stomach fluttering. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. And unbeknownst to her, it was also the moment that would set off a chain reaction, leading to changes she couldn't yet imagine. The meeting began with the usual formalities. Adrien Laurent shook hands with the senior executives, exchanging polite greetings before taking his seat at the head of the table. Nia stayed in the background, jotting down notes and keeping an eye on the clock. She figured her role would be limited to passing documents or refilling water glasses. Nothing too exciting. But as the discussion started, it became clear that this wasn't going to be a typical meeting. Mr. Laurent dove straight into business, outlining his vision for collaboration between their companies. At first, he spoke in English, which put everyone at ease. But then, about 10 minutes in, he switched gears. Without warning, he transitioned to French. The room fell silent. Eyes darted around nervously as people struggled to keep up. Some fumbled with translation apps on their phones, while others simply stared blankly, hoping someone else would step in. Nia felt her pulse quicken. She hadn't expected him to switch languages so abruptly, but she knew she couldn't just sit there doing nothing. Taking a deep breath, she leaned forward slightly and began translating key points under her breath for the people sitting closest to her. Her voice was soft at first, almost hesitant, but as she continued, her confidence grew. Soon, several heads turned toward her, nodding gratefully as they scribbled notes based on her translations. Adrien noticed too. He paused mid-sentence, glancing at Nia with a curious expression. "You speak French fluently?" he asked, switching back to English briefly. "Yes, sir," Nia replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I learned it during my visits to Senegal." He nodded thoughtfully, then resumed speaking in French, this time directing some of his questions directly to her. Nia answered each one calmly, even though her heart was pounding. She explained technical terms, clarified misunderstandings, and offered insights that helped bridge the gap between the two teams. By the end of the meeting, she wasn't just translating words, she was facilitating communication, ensuring everyone stayed on the same page. When the meeting wrapped up, Adrien stood and thanked the group for their time. Before leaving, however, he approached Nia privately. "You have excellent command of my language," he remarked, his tone warm yet curious. "Where did you learn?" Nia hesitated for a moment, unsure how much detail to share. "I spent summers in Senegal growing up," she explained. "My family is from there, and I picked up Wolof and French along the way. It's been years since. I've used it regularly, though." Adrien smiled, clearly impressed. "It's rare to find someone who can adapt so seamlessly. You're talented. Not many people could handle what you did today." His words caught her off guard. No one had ever called her talented before, especially not in front of such high-profile individuals. Nia felt a flush of pride but quickly pushed it aside. "Thank you," she said softly. "I just did what I could to help." Before walking away, Adrien reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. "If you're ever interested in exploring opportunities outside your current role, I'd like to hear from you." Nia accepted the card, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface. She murmured a quiet thank you and watched as he exited the room, surrounded by assistants and security personnel. Once he was gone, the office erupted into chatter. People crowded around her desk, asking questions and offering congratulations. "Did he really give you his card? What did he say to you? Are you going to call him?" Nia shrugged, trying to play it cool, but inside her mind was racing. What did this mean? Was he serious about offering her opportunities? And if so, what kind of opportunities were we talking about? She tucked the card into her wallet without saying much, eager to process everything later. That evening, after a long day of work, Nia sat on her couch, staring at the card. The gold lettering shimmered faintly under the dim light of her apartment. On one side was his name, Adrien Laurent, and on the other his contact information. It seemed surreal, holding something so small yet potentially life-changing in her hands. She thought about her current job, the endless spreadsheets, The mundane tasks, the lack of growth opportunities. Sure, it paid the bills, but it didn't ignite any passion within her. Could this be her chance to break free from the monotony? To pursue something bigger? But doubt crept in too. Who was she kidding? A billionaire CEO wasn't going to drop everything to mentor or hire her. Maybe he gave out cards like candy, collecting contacts without meaning anything by it. Or worse, maybe he'd forget all about her the second he stepped onto his private jet. Still, something nagged at her. This wasn't just about Adrienne Laurent. It was about her own potential. If she let fear hold her back now, she might regret it forever. So, after hours of deliberation, she decided to send him a short email. Nothing fancy, just a polite note, thanking him for the opportunity and expressing interest in learning more. Clicking send, Nia braced herself for whatever came next. Would he respond? Or would her message disappear into the void of unread emails? Only time would tell. Over the next few days, life went back to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after meeting someone like Adrienne Laurent. Nia returned to her routine, answering calls, typing reports, and serving lattes at the coffee shop. But beneath the surface, anticipation simmered. Every time her phone buzzed, she glanced at it, half expecting to see his name pop up. Then, one morning, it finally happened. An email notification lit up her screen. From Adrienne Laurent. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. Inside was a brief message inviting her to interview for a position at his Paris headquarters. He described the role vaguely. A liaison, officer responsible for managing international projects, but made it clear that he believed she had the skills and mindset to excel. Nia read the email 3 times, her mind spinning. Paris? A job offer from a billionaire? This couldn't be real, could it? Yet here it was, written in plain text, impossible to ignore. Her first instinct was to panic, moving to another country, leaving behind everything familiar. It sounded terrifying, but then again so did staying stuck in the same rut forever. Deep down she knew this was the kind of opportunity most people only dreamed of. And if she didn't take it, she'd always wonder what might have been. So with trembling hands she typed out a reply. Yes, I'm interested. Let's talk. As she hit send, a wave of emotions washed over her. Excitement, fear, hope, uncertainty. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain. Her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The email exchange with Adrienne Laurent set off a whirlwind of emotions for Nia. On one hand, she was thrilled. This was the kind of opportunity most people only dreamed about. On the other hand, fear gnawed at her. Moving to Paris? Working directly under a billionaire CEO? It all sounded like something out of a movie, not real life. But as the days passed and preparations began, Nia realized she had no choice but to take the leap. Her friends were the first to hear the news. Over dinner at their favorite diner, she broke it down for them. The meeting, the phone call, the business card, and now the invitation to interview in Paris. At first, they stared at her in disbelief. Wait, one of them said, pointing a fork loaded with fries at her. You're telling us you might move to Paris? Like France? The place with croissants and fancy lights? Nia laughed nervously. Yeah, that's the one. Another friend leaned forward, eyes wide. Girl, you have to go. This is your shot. If you don't take it, I will personally drag you onto that plane myself. It was easy for them to say, though. They weren't the ones facing the unknown. Nia spent hours scrolling through pictures of Paris online. The Eiffel Tower, cobblestone streets, bustling cafes. It looked beautiful, sure, but also intimidating. How would she navigate a city where she didn't know anyone? What if she failed? Miserably and had to come crawling back home? Her family was supportive but cautious. Her grandmother, who always had wisdom to share, called her late one night. Child, she said gently, sometimes we get scared because we can see how far we'd fall if things don't work out. But what about how high you could fly if they do? That stuck with Nia. By the time her flight was booked and her suitcase, Packed, she felt a mix of excitement and dread, a cocktail of emotions that kept her up the night before departure. When Nia stepped off the plane in Paris, the crisp air hit her like a welcome hug. The airport buzzed with activity, people speaking rapid French around her. For a moment she wondered if she'd made a mistake. Could she really handle this? A driver sent by Adrian's company greeted her outside baggage claim, holding a sign with her name on it. As they drove through the city, Nia pressed her face against the car window, taking in everything. The grand architecture, the narrow alleyways lined with shops, the Seine River glinting in the sunlight. It was overwhelming but exhilarating. She reminded herself why she was here, to prove to herself that she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. The next morning, Nia arrived at the headquarters of Adrian's company. The building was sleek and modern, towering over the surrounding structures. Inside, glass walls reflected natural light, and employees moved with purpose. Nia felt small as she walked toward the reception desk, clutching her portfolio tightly. Her interview took place in a spacious conference room overlooking the city. Adrian himself led the discussion along with two senior executives. From the start, he put her at ease. "Relax," he said with a smile. "We're just having a conversation." They asked about her background, her experiences, and how she thought she could contribute to the company. Nia spoke honestly, sharing stories from her time at the tech firm and explaining how her ability to connect with diverse groups of people had helped solve problems. When they asked why she wanted the job, she hesitated for a moment before answering truthfully. "I've spent my whole life playing it safe," she admitted. "But deep down, I know I'm meant for bigger things. I want to grow, to challenge myself, and I think this role could help me do that." Adrian nodded approvingly, his expression thoughtful. Afterward, he walked her to the elevator himself. "Thank you for coming all this way," he said. "We'll be in touch soon." Nia left the building feeling both drained and energized. She hadn't expected the interview to go so smoothly, but there was still no guarantee she'd get the job. While waiting for their decision, she explored the city, wandering through parks, visiting museums, and practicing her French with strangers. Each day brought new discoveries, and slowly, Paris began to feel less foreign. A week later, the HOA call came. Adrian offered her the position of International Liaison Officer, responsible for bridging communication gaps between teams across different countries. He emphasized how impressed he was with her adaptability and authenticity. "You remind me of myself when I was starting out," he said. Hungry, humble, and ready to learn. Tears welled up in Nia's eyes as she accepted the offer. This was it, the beginning of a new chapter. Starting the job wasn't easy. The work was fast-paced and demanding, requiring long hours and constant multitasking. Nia often found herself juggling emails in 3 languages while coordinating meetings across multiple time zones. There were moments when she doubted herself, wondering if she was cut out for such responsibility. Imposter syndrome crept in whenever she compared herself to her highly accomplished colleagues. But Nia refused to let self-doubt win. Instead, she leaned into her strengths, her empathy, her curiosity, and her knack for finding common ground among people from different backgrounds. She threw herself into projects, determined to prove her worth. Slowly but surely, she earned the respect of her team. They began seeking her input during brainstorming sessions and relying on her to smooth over cultural misunderstandings. One evening, after a particularly grueling project launch, Adrian invited her to join him for dinner. They sat at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river, sipping wine and talking about everything from global politics to childhood memories. At one point, Adrian leaned back in his chair and studied her thoughtfully. "Do you ever wonder why you're here?" he asked. Nia blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, "why did you catch my attention that day in your office? Why did I bring you here, to this company, to this city?" She shrugged, unsure how to answer. "Maybe because I answered your call in French?" He chuckled. "Partially, yes. But it's more than that. You have something special, a quiet confidence, a willingness to step up even when you're unsure of yourself. That's rare, especially in someone so young. His words touched her deeply. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she belonged here, that maybe she truly had earned her place. As the weeks turned into months, Naya settled into her role and her new life in Paris. She joined local communities, made friends, and even started learning Italian on the side. The city that once seemed so daunting now felt like home. And every time she walked past the Eiffel Tower or strolled along the Seine, she reminded herself of how far she'd come since that fateful Tuesday morning in her old office. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still moments of doubt. But Nia knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had taken a risk, stepped into the unknown, and discovered a version of herself she never knew existed. And as she looked ahead to whatever came next, she couldn't help but smile. Nia's journey in Paris was nothing short of transformative. Every day brought new challenges but also new lessons. Her role as international liaison officer pushed her to grow in ways she hadn't anticipated. She wasn't just translating languages or managing schedules. She was building bridges between cultures, departments, and personalities. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and often overwhelming, but it was also deeply fulfilling. At first, the pressure felt suffocating. The company operated on a global scale, with offices in Europe, Asia, Africa, and North America. Nia found herself sitting in meetings where 4 different languages were spoken simultaneously. She had to think fast, listen closely, and find ways to ensure everyone understood each other, not just the words but the intentions behind them. Sometimes that meant explaining technical jargon to someone whose native language wasn't English. Other times it meant smoothing over misunderstandings caused by cultural differences. For example, during one video conference with a team in Japan, Naya noticed something odd. The Japanese colleagues kept nodding politely but weren't contributing much to the discussion. When the meeting ended, Adrian pulled her aside. "Did you notice how quiet they were?" he asked. "Do you think they agreed with everything?" Nia hesitated before answering. "I don't think so. In their culture, silence often means disagreement, not agreement. They might not feel comfortable voicing concerns directly." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. What do you suggest we do?" "Well," Nia said carefully, "maybe follow up with them individually. Let them know it's okay to share feedback privately if they're hesitant to speak up in group settings." Adrian nodded approvingly. "Good idea. Handle it." That moment stuck with Nia. For the first time, she realized her insights mattered, not because she was fluent in multiple languages, but because she understood people. She saw nuances others missed, and that made her invaluable. Over time, she became the go-to person for navigating tricky situations, whether it was mediating conflicts between teams or helping executives adapt presentations for international audiences. But success didn't come without its struggles. Long hours left little room for personal life, and imposter syndrome crept in whenever she compared herself to her peers. Many of them had degrees from prestigious universities and years of experience in multinational corporations. Nia, on the other hand, had worked her way up from serving coffee and typing reports. Who was she to sit at the same table as these accomplished professionals? There were nights when she lay awake, replaying conversations in her head, wondering if she'd said the wrong thing or made a mistake. Had she represented her team properly? Was she doing enough to prove herself? These doubts weighed heavily on her, but she refused to let them stop her. Instead, she leaned on the support system she'd built, a close-knit group of co-workers who admired her work ethic, friends she'd met in Paris, and nightly phone calls with her grandmother back home. "You're smarter than you give yourself credit for," her grandmother would say, her voice warm and reassuring. "Don't let anyone make you forget your worth, not even yourself." Those words carried Nia through tough days. Slowly, she began to trust herself more. She started speaking up in meetings, offering ideas instead of just relaying information. To her surprise, people listened. Her suggestions about improving cross-cultural communication strategies led to better collaboration across continents. Her efforts to organize team-building events helped foster stronger relationships within the company. Before long, she wasn't just seen as the translator or the liaison, she was seen as a leader. One evening, after wrapping up a major project launch, Adrian invited Nia to dinner again. This time, they went to a cozy bistro tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Over plates of steak frites and glasses of red wine, they talked about everything: the highs and lows of running a global business, the importance of empathy and leadership, and the value of staying grounded despite success. At one point, Adrian leaned forward, his expression serious. "Let me ask you something," he said. "Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?" Nia blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever asked her that question before. She took a sip of her wine, buying herself some time to think. "Honestly, I'm not sure," she admitted. "I never imagined I'd be here doing this, but I guess I want to keep growing. I want to use what I've learned to help others, to create opportunities for people who might not have them otherwise." Adrian smiled faintly. "That's good. Very good. You know, when I first met you, I saw potential. Not just because you could speak French, but because you had a spark, a hunger to learn, to push boundaries. That's rare, especially in someone so young." His words hit Nia like a wave. For so long, she'd doubted herself, convinced she wasn't smart enough or experienced enough to belong in this world. Hearing Adrian validate her journey meant more than she could put into words. As the months passed, Nia continued to thrive. She traveled frequently for work, visiting offices in Tokyo, Johannesburg, and São Paulo. Each trip taught her something new, not just about business, but about humanity. She marveled at how similar people were, regardless of where they came from. Everyone wanted to be heard, to feel valued, to contribute in meaningful ways. And Nia realized her true gift wasn't her ability to speak multiple languages. It was her ability to connect with people, to see them for who they truly were. Back in Paris, she threw herself into community-building initiatives outside of work, too. She joined mentorship programs aimed at empowering women and minorities in corporate spaces. She volunteered at local schools, teaching kids basic French and sharing stories about her own journey. She even started a blog, writing about the challenges and triumphs of navigating a global career as a young Black woman. Her posts resonated with readers worldwide, earning her a loyal following. Through it all, Nia remained humble. She knew she still had a lot to learn, but she also knew she was capable of achieving great things. Every milestone, whether it was leading a successful campaign, receiving praise from Adrian, or simply making someone smile, reinforced her belief in herself. By the end of her second year in Paris, Nia felt like a completely different person. The shy, uncertain assistant who had once hesitated to answer a phone call in French was gone. In her place stood a confident, driven professional who inspired those around her. She had faced her fears, embraced uncertainty, and emerged stronger because of it. And yet she knew this wasn't the end of her story. There were still dreams to chase, goals to achieve, and lives to touch. As she looked out at the glittering lights of Paris from her apartment window, Nia smiled softly. She didn't know exactly where life would take her next, but she was ready for whatever came her way. After all, she'd already proven that she could rise to any challenge. One conversation, one connection at a time. By the time Nia reached her third year in Paris, she had become a force to be reckoned with. Her confidence had grown exponentially, and so had her influence within the company. She wasn't just executing tasks anymore. She was shaping strategies, leading initiatives, and inspiring those around her. But what truly set her apart was her ability to see potential in others. Whether it was mentoring junior employees or advocating for underrepresented voices in meetings, Nia made it her mission to lift people up, just as Adrian had done for her. Her blog, which started as a personal outlet, had blossomed into something much bigger. It attracted readers from all over the world, many of whom reached out to share their own stories of struggle and triumph. Some were young professionals navigating corporate ladders. Others were students dreaming of careers abroad. Nia responded to every message, offering advice, encouragement, and sometimes just a listening ear. The more she gave back, the more fulfilled she felt. But despite her success, Nia couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more she could do. Working for Adrian's company had been an incredible opportunity, but deep down, she knew she wanted to carve her own path. She began to dream of starting something of her own, something that would allow her to create real change on a larger scale. The idea came to her during a trip to Senegal. After years of being away, she decided to visit her family again, this time bringing along some of the lessons she'd learned in Paris. As she walked through bustling markets and quiet villages, reconnecting with relatives and old friends, she noticed something. So many talented young people in her community were stuck, not because they lacked skills or ambition, but because they lacked access to opportunities. It hit her then. Why not use her experience to help them? Why not build a platform that connected global companies with diverse talent from underserved regions? The thought excited her, but it also scared her. Starting a business was risky, especially when she was already comfortable in her current role. What if she failed? What if no one believed in her vision? Nia wrestled with these questions for weeks. She talked to Adrian about it during one of their regular check-ins. To her surprise, he didn't discourage her. Instead, he smiled knowingly. "You've always been someone who sees possibilities where others see obstacles," he said. "If anyone can make this work, it's you." His words gave her the push she needed. With his blessing and a promise to stay in touch, Nia resigned from her position and poured all her energy into building her consulting firm. She called it Global Roots, a nod to her heritage and her belief that everyone deserves a chance to grow, no matter where they come from. The early days of Global Roots were tough. Nia worked tirelessly, juggling research, networking, and fundraising while trying to maintain her blog and mentorship programs. There were moments when she questioned whether she'd made the right decision. Money was tight, and rejection letters piled up faster than she could count. But every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of why she started this journey: to give others the same opportunities she'd been given. Slowly, but surely, things began to fall into place. A few former colleagues from Adrian's company signed on as clients, eager to tap into her expertise in cross-cultural communication. Word spread quickly, and soon, other businesses followed suit. Before long, Global Roots was partnering with organizations across industries, helping them diversify their teams and expand their reach. One of Nia's proudest achievements was launching a fellowship program for young professionals from marginalized communities. Participants received training, mentorship, and placement opportunities with top-tier companies worldwide. Watching them succeed filled Nia with pride. It was like seeing pieces of herself in each of them, determined and unstoppable. As Global Roots grew, so did Nia's reputation. She was invited to speak at conferences, write articles for major publications, and even appear on television. People began referring to her as a trailblazer, a visionary, and a champion for diversity. While the attention was flattering, Nia never let it go to her head. She stayed grounded, always remembering where she came from and how far she'd come. Years later, Nia stood on stage at a leadership summit in New York City, addressing an audience of thousands. Dressed in a bold red dress that popped against the bright lights, she shared her story, from answering that fateful phone call in French to founding Global Roots. Her voice was steady, her tone warm and relatable. "People often ask me how I got here," she said, pausing to scan the crowd. "They think it's because I spoke French or because I worked for a billionaire CEO. But the truth is, none of that mattered. What mattered was saying yes to the unknown even when I was terrified. It was trusting myself enough to take risks, to fail, and to try again. And most importantly, it was believing that my voice mattered, even when the world didn't realize it yet." The room erupted in applause, but Nia barely heard it. She was too busy reflecting on her journey, the challenges, the victories, the people who had shaped her along the way. From her grandmother's wisdom to Adrian's faith in her potential, she owed so much to those who had believed in her before she believed in herself. After the event, dozens of attendees lined up to meet her. Some thanked her for her speech, others asked for advice or simply wanted to shake her hand. One young woman stood out, a college student with big dreams and even bigger doubts. "I don't know if I'm good enough," she confessed, tears welling up in her eyes. Nia smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Let me tell you something," she said. "No one starts out knowing everything. All you need is courage. The courage to take the first step, to keep going when things get hard, and to trust that you'll figure it out as you go. You're stronger than you think." The student nodded, wiping her tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed to hear that." Looking back, Nia realized her life had come full circle. That shy girl, answering a phone call in French, had grown into a woman who inspired others to chase their dreams. She had faced fears, overcome obstacles, and created a legacy that extended far beyond herself. And though her journey was far from over, she knew one thing for certain. Every moment, every challenge, every triumph had been worth it. As she left the conference hall that evening, the city skyline glowing behind her, Nia took a deep breath. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, but she was ready. After all, she had spent years proving to herself that anything was possible, if only she dared to believe it.